Facebook and Twitter feeds. The public may watch these meetings as they occur or watch them at a later date. The advisory committee meetings are all public meetings, and all materials are available and will be made available to the public through posting the materials on the district's webpage. As you know, my name is Stephen Sparks. I am the Executive Administrator for Long Range Planning, and I am leading this project. So to start this evening, as we start all of our meetings, I wanted to outline our meeting expectations. We assume the best of intentions for all participants. We all want the best for all of our students. We listen intently to understand better. We are open to considering new ideas. We remain open to influence and are not judgmental. We will consider all options. There are no bad questions. Our interactions will be done with respect, and we will respect opposing viewpoints. I want to be sure to address to everyone here that our committee members are representing communities and viewpoints from across the district. The committee is here to represent the district as a whole. While they've been appointed by middle school attendance area, their charge is what is the benefit, what is the best recommendation that will benefit all of the students in the district. Along these lines, I wanted to address something at the behest of Superintendent Grotting. There has been some public comment that has been submitted online that has not met the expectations for this process. And I'm speaking about the allegations of bias or unethical conduct. Superintendent, myself, and others have been reviewing the comments and are satisfied that the committee is acting in the best interests of all students in the district. I remind everyone that the committee's action will be a recommendation to Superintendent Grotting. The superintendent with the board will be making the decision for the middle school boundary adjustment. The committee's recommendation will be based on the committee's analysis of boundary ideas and the data that will be provided to the committee and the public by staff. How the boundary ideas will satisfy the board objectives and the factors contained in Board Policy JC. The board's recommendation may or may not be unanimous. If the recommendation is not unanimous, that means at least 9 members, which is the majority for this committee, will have to agree on a recommendation. Again, ultimately, the decision will be made by Superintendent Grotting, and his decision may or may not vary from the advisory committee's recommendation. That is still the continuing iterative process that this project will undertake. So, before we start the committee's discussion, I want to address how the public testimony is going to work later this evening. We will be drawing names randomly across the elementary school boundaries that are present here tonight. If your name is called, you will be the person providing the testimony, not another person. I understand that this happened at the last meeting for one of the elementary school attendance areas, and that person has sent me and the superintendent an email apologizing for the mix-up, and we accept that apology. If you as an audience want to have a single representative speak, then we expect to have a single comment yellow card from that attendance area. For these reasons, we want every person who wants to speak to have an equal opportunity to have their names called. So that's it for meeting logistics here. You see behind me 6 maps, and you have no doubt seen them on the district's webpage. These maps were created by staff in direct response to the discussion that the committee had at the last meeting on December 19th. We are calling these test maps because they are designed to test assumptions, data, and understand how these maps will or will not meet the objectives, the factors, and just basically understand the impacts of these ideas. These maps are going to be used to focus the discussion of the committee, and we expect that at the end of the committee's discussion, they're going to provide us direction on these maps to either get rid of them and never see them again, to make changes to them, to come up with something different. But what we're going to start doing here is we're going to start winnowing the number of maps that we have to start coalescing around ideas that work. So, as we talked about at the last meeting, we have these board objectives. We have to create an attendance boundary for the Timberland Middle School, and we have to reduce the enrollment population, the student population, to approximately 90% of the permanent capacity of Stoller Middle School. So tonight we were going to be starting with these maps, looking at these objectives. Now, I don't want to go through every single map and all the data that is associated with these maps because you will listen to me talk for the next hour and a half, and no one, believe me, wants to hear me speak for that long. So what I'm going to do here is I hope that the audience is going to be able to see this a little bit better. But what we're going to do is we are going to talk about, at the advisory committee, we're going to talk about the maps. We're not going to do the kind of free association conversation that we had at the last meeting. We're going to have a little more structure to it where we're going to talk about map 1X, whatever. The committee is going to talk about that, and then we will move to the next one. So we'll have the maps up on the screen so people can see what we're talking about. But before we get started, I'm just going to, pop through the maps just a little bit so everybody can kind of get their bearings. Right here on the screen, this is test map 1. This came to us as a request from the advisory committee. This is test map 2, also came to us as a request from the advisory committee. Test map 3, also coming from the advisory committee. Test map 4. Test map feeder. This is something you'll recall there was a lot of discussion with the committee about maintaining whole feeder patterns to clean up splits to the extent possible. And this is what Mr. McCracken and I worked on to come up with testing a no split feeder. It's imperfect, but that's what this map is in response to from the committee. This is the same where we talked about capacity at the last meeting, where we came up with a map that talks about utilizing the capacity of the buildings. My last slide here is to do a side-by-side comparison of these different ideas. First, as this is a permanent capacity analysis using 2021 and 2025 projection data. And then this one is a side-by-side of the feeder patterns to high school for the 6 maps. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to ask the advisory committee to kick us off on how they want to, which map they want to talk about. I remind you all that when you want to speak, please tilt your name card up so we can call on you and go from there. So, Jason, you're first.
Thank Thank you. Before I get into a specific map, I wanted to share one thing and then ask a question of you and Robert about specifically some of the data related to these maps. The one thing I wanted to share is that I noticed I asked Robert to clarify it, and he confirmed that, I was seeing it right, and it wasn't just for the typo. The one that jumped out to me, and it's easiest to see looking at the map 4. The map 4 is essentially today's boundaries with the exception of solar and timberland. The current solar boundaries look at solar and timberland. So you can also, if you look at that, it's very easy to see relative to today what's happening. And what jumped out to me was looking at 5 O's. The relative to today's capacity, by 2021, it's expected to jump 100. And then by 2025, it's going to fall another 200. That's actually, it's a really significant swing in a short period of time. And it's not as severe, but I think I remember Whitford, Highland, and maybe also Mountain View had maybe a 100-person drop in the 2021 to 2025. I think it's worth us kind of putting a pin in that idea because as we get into schedules of implementation of some of these changes, it may not only be desirable for the community, it may be logistically more desirable to stage some of these changes later. In other words, if we say have to try to move students into 5 O's, according to these numbers, we will have an easier time in 6 years than we will in 2. And since we're not being driven by the need to open, in such a move, we would be trying to open timberland with that move. I think that gives us some possibility. So my question about this data, I wanted to orient myself 3 different data sources, make sure we all understand the differences, where they're coming from. So as I look at these numbers, looking at, say, the summary total for 2021 across all the middle schools, including Major Crossing and the Super programs, I'm seeing 7752, maybe 7751. I noted on the PSU forecast, their number was 7695, not a huge difference, but say 1% there. But as I tease apart the various schools, I can see some larger jumps than others. I could say for Whitford, understand it because we're going to be moving, the PSU study was on prior to the decision to move the gateway program. So that accounts for some of that jump. But in particular, obviously, Stolar's where the pressure is. And I saw maybe 191 student variants there. And I think, if I remember right, we were expecting maybe half of that Springville K-8 population to be resident to Stolar. I just want to make sure we understand why the increase versus the PSU forecast, what else we're seeing that causes you to put that in there. But then I also really want to understand, if I look at the attendance report that Stephen and Carl delivered to the board in November, it seems to be from a different data set because those have current today's population, even adding in the 2 K-8 programs we can propose at 7159. So compared to roughly 7,800 for the other 2 sources, it seems like there's something else going on there. And I want to make sure I understand that that's a pretty significant gap.
You want to down the side there. There. The light. There you go.
Sorry. Yeah, there is some difference between this projection and the PSU projection. They're 2 separate projections done with similar methodologies but in different systems. This particular projection takes the student cohorts and rolls them up or progresses them, calculates progression factors and progresses them. It also takes residential development that is occurring around the district and generates students and then populates them into the model. And the difference between that and PSU is that this model will tend to, you can only put in one student generation factor, and then it will generate that student when that unit becomes available. And I wanted to make sure that we were conservative enough about when the units were coming online, and then when they would generate the students. So there is sort of a difference between the two projections. I don't have at my fingertips exactly where to point out where those differences are at the moment. Five Oaks is, I looked at the Five Oaks with PSU and ours, and it shows the same kind of thing where we see an increase in the population and then a decline. Part of that is because of some larger cohorts that are just now moving into Five Oaks, and then a decline after that. And you're right, that may be an opportunity for the district to take advantage of our phasing. We can look at that when we're getting closer to the map itself. And then in terms of the enrollment report and these particular figures, I am looking at how this projection and our annual projection sort of line up as a result of your question. And we can provide a little more information about that, but at a subsequent meeting. But I don't have it at my fingertips at the moment.
Okay, thank you. With that big of a gap, I want to make sure we get it right. I want to make sure, I know I've seen in different reports over the years, some numbers include what are, I think, called just the special programs in schools, which typically we don't deal with when we're talking about capacity and we're talking about health forecast.
Yeah. Also, students who live outside of the district attend Beaverton schools are counted in the enrollment report. They're not counted in this projection. So that would be a point of difference there.
Yeah, but in this case, it's the attendance report is more than 500 lower. I mean, we're looking at 7-8%, which is pretty significant. The numbers are not. In our last meeting, we talked. We've done kind of some just quick math to try and calculate the students expected in the school, taking out optional programs, etc. And we come up at the time with 1745 projected total. Well, based on this, it's actually 1878, which means we've got a goal to hit that 90% target. 905 is out of solar, which is 58% of today's population. I mean, that's a staggering number. And I guess if I could, again, just making sure these numbers are right, of course, if you look at everything, I would also say that I wouldn't be too concerned with erring on the side of caution, given that, we've been handed an objective of 90% of permanent capacity. There's 840 or 60 seats in portables. That's already an enormous cushion for unexpected populations going up. I want to make sure we aren't double or even triple safeguarding, and as a result, having to move a lot more kids out of storage than we otherwise would.
Thank you. Divya, you're next.
Hello everyone. So I'm going to refer to few maps and data points, so please stay with me. The first that I'm going to look at are obviously the maps, and the second is the SUMA resident case by grid code, and the AC report supplied by CSMART. All of those are on the site. So overall, I think I have 3 big comments to make that comment across all these maps. First of all, thank you for removing the slips. in the south side of the district. I think that gave us, some wiggle room on the Cedar Park, 5 Oaks side of things. Nancy Rise, Greenway, Elementary, Cooper Mountain, for example, do not have any more space than they used to be. So that's good. Second, creating theme maps using 2021 and 25 enrollment data. The utilization of permanent capacity at solar is looking significantly different in these two time periods. And it's highlighted the magnitude of growth that the district is seeing on the north side. Third, the theme maps consider the possibility of adding another school offering SUMA program, though it is not decided. And so Timberland looks like these maps have the opportunity of having a second SUMA school in the north side, and that is Timberland. That's good news. Okay, now let's look at maps. Community test map 1 and staff period test map 9. From solar point of view, these theme maps are pretty much the same, right? And then the theme map is basically a requirement of theme 1 on December 19 that we shared. We are removing the northern part of Finley from this map. By removing Finley altogether, the utilization of solar in 21 is 104, going to 130% in 2025. Both these time periods are not meeting our objective. Right? However, it does highlight that solar overcrowding situation will continue and worsen due to the new developments in the North Delhi, while other middle schools have been underutilized in the next 3 years. Is that the right assessment, do you think?
I am not disagreeing with anything you're here saying.
Okay, good. I have more to say.
Okay, all right.
Community test map 2 and 3 are similar too. So I'm looking at test map 3 because that gives a better
Okay,
distribution.
so Divya, I want to stop you right there. Instead of, I want to hear what you have to say about, and I'm sure the rest of everybody here wants to hear what you have to say about maps 2 and 3 and the rest of the maps. But I want to have be sure we have a more focused discussion this evening on maps as we proceed instead of, bouncing around a bit. So do you have anything else you wanted to say about map 1 since you've started us off
Yes,
on
I
this?
do have some
Okay.
comments on map 1. So there are some requirements that can be done on map 1 though to bring it closer to objective and still accommodate Springville and Cedar together. So I have looked at taking out SUMA out of solar in order to accommodate Springville. By removing SUMA from solar, the grand total attending on-site students will be 1231 in 2025, while the objective is 970. There are other consequences also that are resulting that the SUMA program is removed from solar. The first one is, historically the data has shown that SUMA kids who become eligible for that program end up going to the SUMA school. There's at least 100% that I've seen in the historical. It's on BSG side, by the way. So 90 students in Jacob Ismer are opting for SUMA program. Today they are able to walk to solar. They will be bused to another private school to attend SUMA if SUMA moves out of solar. 82 SUMA students from Springville and Salem, and these numbers by the way are coming from the SUMA grade that was shown on the BSG side, are also busing to another father middle school. 95 Finley kids that are walking to solar are also now having to be bused. That's a total of 370 kids we are mobilizing to accommodate 543 students of Springville, and solar is still at 1231 when the objective is 970. Hence, the community test map 1 and a similar staff figure test is not meeting objective from my point of view, and also the basic policy, neighborhood proximity and accessibility.
Charisse, you had your card up first.
Quick question, just before we really dive into these. You had mentioned at the last meeting that you were attending PTA, PTO, community org meetings in the South. Was there an overall feedback from the parents in the South that we need to take into account before we dive into these maps we requested?
Thank you for that question. I have attended 3 this week, and I'll attend another 3 PTO meetings next week to really bring this attention to those schools. Most of the parents are kind of, hey, how does this affect me? Should I be worried about this or whatnot? And so they have been, at least the 3 PTOs that I spoke at this week, they've been sufficiently scared to pay attention. The the overall communication that I've received so far, as in terms of initial reaction, is to not do, to remove splits from the community. So that's Nancy Riles. I'm going to talk to Cooper Mountain. I believe that's at the end of the month. But that's been the gist that I've been getting so far. Nancy Riles was perhaps a little split on whether or not split feeders were good, bad, because they have, they're all together in elementary school, they split in middle school, but they all come back at Mountainside. So the audience that I spoke to was kind of, yeah, but, we're happy either way. Kind of thing. And all of the schools have talked about, or all the parents have talked about, well, how do I compare one middle school to the other, and are heartened by the superintendent's directive to create a standard experience across all the middle schools. So I've asked them to be sure that they get out there and start submitting comments. I've been seeing some trickle in here over the past day or so, and which you'll begin to see next week. Michael.
Thanks, Steve. First, as a blanket statement, I wanted to say thank you to everyone in the community who has submitted their comments online. I have read every single comment. I also appreciate the parents who have actually went even farther, put together PowerPoint presentations for us with excellent information. I have reviewed and considered all of those too, so I wanted to acknowledge the hard work that I know that went into those. So thank you for that time. Secondly, Steve, I also appreciate that we're narrowing the focus of tonight's meeting. At this point, I think we need to be eliminating maps or eliminating possibilities and getting to a point where we can have a recommendation on the timeline that's currently set forth for us. So to that end, with respect to big map number one, this is the map that I tend to gravitate towards currently. It does fill objective number one. It fills Timberland both in 2021 and 2025. It is accurate that Conestoga is still a little bit over capacity, both in 2021 and significantly in 2025. However, I think the proposal that I would ask the committee to consider is taking a look at the elementary school boundaries for Springville. And if you look at map number one, for example, if you could read the small writing on here, you see right around the boundaries, there's 80 kids, for example, in one section. There's 78 kids in another section. All right, when I say around the boundary, right around in here, okay? So I'm talking about narrowing, or I guess, carving out, if you will, a section of Springville to go to a different school to make the solar numbers go down, both in 2021 and 2025. So what does that look like? I don't know. I'm just presenting a concept at this point. When we do that, we're also pushing a number of kids into 5 Oaks, and 5 Oaks becomes overcrowded at that point. And so the shift is on to the south. My proposal with respect to P1 to ease the overcrowding at 5 Oaks would be to, logically speaking, take Beaver Acres out of 5 Oaks and move it to Meadow Park. Meadow Park has room, 5 Oaks doesn't, and Beaver Acres, with respect to one of the JC policies for proximity, I think makes some sense. I think then lastly, with respect to feedback one, we take all of those actions, then we're down to a few meetings from now, really just sort of cleaning up around the edges. Are there feedback matters that we can fix that make sense? So
Mike, let me be really clear here. You said theme map 1. Are you talking about test map 1?
yes.
Okay,
that's
thank
map
you.
one. In fact, I'm glad the theme maps are not even here tonight. That was the best thing that I saw. further communication. I don't want to see those anymore.
Okay,
But that's all I have, Steve, so thank you.
okay. All right, Michelle.
First of all, I totally agree with Michael that we are going to have to carve out, as much as I hate splitting the elementary school, it seems evident to me that there are no three elementary schools that can go into Stoller that will not result in overcrowding. Whether it's Finley or Springville, it stays. We are over capacity no matter what. So I think one of those schools, we have to split it off, and I hate to say that. My big problem with test map one is the high school feeders. If we do move Beaver Acres into Meadow Park, now Meadow Park will feed into 4 high schools. And I'm hearing from Meadow Park parents in the public comments that it's been really hard for those kids when they're split into 3 right now. So I know we've been concentrating a lot on elementary to middle school, but I don't want to forget middle to high school as well.
So I'm glad you bring that up. Not to call out Michael for, destroying friendships and lives going from middle school to high school. No, I appreciate you calling that out because you're talking about the feeder patterns. And the feeder patterns, as well as transportation, as well as a lot of our demographic work, is going to be, our next phase of iteration. So while, let's just say, for argument's sake, test map 1 with perhaps some tweaks may meet the board objectives, but as you start applying those other factors to the test maps, they may become untenable. So, for example, if it's 3 high schools or it's 4 high schools, even though the map works, you may find that but for the feeder patterns, you can't accept it. Now, that's not to say that tonight you want to say, as you did, Michelle, boy howdy, I really don't want 4 feeder schools. And if you as a group are saying, yeah, I really don't like that either, well, we can jump ahead and discount that. But I really do want us to remain focused here tonight on our objectives, and we get to patiently, I admit, I'm asking you to get to the factors where we will start winnowing based on those other issues. So I'm sorry, did you have anything else? Okay. Jason.
So I wanted to highlight, and I can talk about it in regards to test map 1, but it's true of all these with the exception of test 4. And it's a really serious objection I have that I can highlight it on these. The other 5 maps have all roughly the same thing. And I'm going to talk because it's specific to what happens to Cedar Park. But this same concept will happen to multiple other schools if we pursue the idea of taking huge chunks of Springville along Buck Creek and pushing it down. You look at Cedar Park as it exists today, and all of these maps take out the 3 largest feeders going into Cedar Park. It takes out Bonnie Slope, Cedar Mill, and Terrell. So there's only 5 elementary schools that go in plus 2 splits. Those are the 3 largest, and my back of the map says that's 60% of the community that's pulled out of there. That's a massive disruption to that school, and I'll remind everyone, we only have a quote problem at Stoller. Left to their own devices, the other schools as they exist are under capacity, and we expect them to fall. And so I'm really reluctant to sentence any one school. And again, I'm talking about Cedar Park that I represent here, but it would be the same thing if we try and pursue 2 or 3, and you've got to hoist 600 or 700 kids out of Stoller into 5 Oaks. you look at the percentage of the capacity in that school now, you've got to then take at least 500 out. You're causing this sea change of culture across 2, 3, 4 schools before it stops. And I think unless we absolutely have to do it, I don't want to pursue that. I've got a longer rant that I can't get to until we're talking about Map 4, so I'll wait on that. But let me get to the chase. That it is, I believe we have options to solve most, if not all, the problem of solar within solar and timberland. It's a question of how we shuffle the, what I'll call the 5.5 parts of it there. But I'll say that.
Okay. I'm a judge.
So first to address Michelle's question, I also want to make sure we're all looking at the maps in the same way. I think what Steve and the District have mentioned is the changing options programs location is an option available to the community. And I think what I recommend the community is to focus on the boundaries and then look at where the options programs can go so that they can fit within the capacity. And before I ask my questions, the other thing I wanted to also conceptually think through is what's the district has given to it. If you look at page 3, and I know Jason pointed out some number discrepancy, that aside. If you look at the utilization of our middle schools, the 9 middle schools, the total attending 9 middle schools, the resident population is 90% mean in 2025. And actually we're at 600%. So there are different ways to look at it. We have 9 middle schools, and actually depending on what is happening in place, which is 4 tables. Like you pointed out, middle school without boundaries, but let's leave that aside. My point is, to bring some objectivity to the problem that's solved. The way I look at this is, and from what the district has given, the district has said we want to use permanent capacity. If we use the permanent capacity to its 100%, that's 100% of the school, and 90% is unique, right? So if one school goes to 100%, something will come down to 80%. So in my mind, what I'm thinking is, if we do the boundary so that in 2025, all middle schools are between 80 to 100% plus minus, that would essentially mean it's all well balanced. As you start going above 90% of the ability, and it's going to happen unless we start with splits next week, hopefully not. So I think that was how I was thinking. So the question to ask, but the question to address what Michelle brought. If you look at the numbers without the options program first, and then decide where the options can go, you actually won't have those tricks. And I think you will sit back and get the other maps, including these. But specific to map number 1, I think there are, again, this is a good thing to work on. When you look at the numbers, if you look at 2025, solar's number without SUMA, just plain solar as it is today, is 1231. And today, without SUMA, solar is 1225. Right, so, bring about the change today, probably not right. But to my point on how to address that, he's recommending, as you were suggesting, changing spring design. Now, my question is, at the very beginning, Steve, you said, NIPS and PETs are allowed, but changing 150 students sounds like a lot. NIPS and PETs, I think what you recommended was if it aligns to a feeder or one street has to change, something like that to manage. And this is very subjective, I know, but you've got to put some lines and I'm sure what exactly we're going to.
So the nip and tuck comment, that was directed at the high school boundaries. But in terms of, if I'm hearing you correctly, about applying nip and tuck changes to elementary schools or, elsewhere, that's certainly a possibility. I would have some reservation to identify elementary school boundaries because we didn't talk about that with our board. And I think that would be asking a bit much. I think we would rather leave those boundaries alone and go through a separate process for elementary schools because there are, like you're seeing here, there are cascading issues within our elementary schools. And I would want to do a proper analysis and a proper process to consider those kinds of changes.
And just so, because of this involving taking out 150 students, I don't think that's something that is within our purview. And so there are one thing map, unless there are other changes that might be want to think about, would work in terms of what registered.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other name tags up here at the moment. Before we close the door on the discussion for test map 1 here, and before we proceed to, I guess, test map 2, does anybody else have any other questions, issues, or comments to make about test map 1? Christy?
So I have an issue with many of these maps that show all of Finley going to Timberland, mainly because one of my priorities is to ensure walkability and not sending students who live across the street from the school to another middle school. And so that is something that I kind of have an issue with test map 1. That's just something that I would like to consider because some of those neighborhoods, especially the one right across from Scholar, they have to go up to Laidlaw and over and down all the way. I mean, it's almost as long to go from Springville to Pipers. And so that's something that I have an issue with test map 1.
So I'm trying to zoom in here, and I think I've done my full ability of technology prowess. But the area I want to be sure we're talking about is, this one's better? Okay. So what we're talking about is this area right up here of Finley, so north of Bronson Creek, and, kind of the stand in the backyard and throw a rock and hit the school. For the record, she's agreeing, yes. Maybe not the rock throwing, but, agreeing with the location. All right, anything else with map 1? Okay, let's go to map 2.
Steve,
Yeah.
I know, I think, government just wanted to start with map 2, but Jason left us out in between and he wanted to talk about the reference to 4. It's okay to start.
Okay, we'll go to map 4.
Okay.
So, Jason, hang on here one sec. Everybody turn to map 4. Okay. Jason, proceed.
Okay, so the point of map 4, the genesis of it, was to say, I've got the numbers here. We have the ability to solve the solar overcapacity problem by utilizing Timberland and solar together. I think that's a unit first. I think they've got here 90% of the total capacity for those two schools is 19 1,862, I think I said 1,878 as a projected numbers. So it is possible. The question is, what are the different options to do it? And then what are the priorities to do it? And again, the main benefit I see to doing it this way is that it minimizes the disruption across the rest of the district. We're not having to do a full, I guess this would be counterclockwise rotation of students across the district. Now this particular stab at it wasn't successful, and I think that was really instructive to me, because as I saw it going in, I said, I've got 6 cards to deal, and I've got 2 players. I've got Stoller, and I've got Timberland. I've got the 5 elementary schools, and I've got the civil program. So map 4, I said, okay, let's take the 2 closest schools to Timberland, and I'm going to acknowledge all the problems with walkability, et cetera. It wasn't necessarily the point. Those 2 schools, as a logical choice, also logical because those 2 almost entirely feed into Sunset. The other 3 elementary schools feed into Westview. And with the single program. But it wasn't enough. It came out to, I think, 700 kids total made it to Timberland, and we've still got over 1,100 up at Stoller, down to just under 1,000. A lesson learned there is that 6th car, the SUMO program, is sort of a half of a car. The SUMO students are not distributed uniformly amongst the 5 elementary schools. So you take Jacob Wismer and you take Findlay out, you're already taking a bunch of the SUMO students with you, a disproportionate number. So it ended up unbalanced. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, again, not that this is the best way to do it, but you take Rock Creek, you put it into Timberland, and you've got 2 schools that are well balanced. You're not making any other changes. Now, again, that's prioritizing. The attempt with respect to distance, our faculty distance, was to try and make sure everyone was driving. There were no one was stuck. No one was given the benefit of walk. Everyone's got to go drive 3, 4, 5 miles. But it's an attempt to be equitable. You can easily flip that. You can take. You can just flip the assignments I had for Timberland and Stoller. Preserve the walking areas for Jacob Wismer, Findlay. Keep Rock Creek there, in which case you've got to take Springville and Sato, send them down there. Another lesson learned, you deal these cards these way, where you're trying to keep, and I'm going to acknowledge, so Rock Creek ends up, we're well aware, any one of these 5 schools we move, they're going to regard this as they've lost. Okay? I'm going to acknowledge here Rock Creek is sort of an additional short end of the stick, in that, as it turns out, once you've assigned Sato and Springville, there's no more room. They're just too big. You can only fit, if those 2 are together, no one else goes. So Rock Creek being the other Westview feeding school is kind of left out of the pool. They're now going to go to middle school with a bunch of Sunset kids and then not see those kids if they go on to high school. So what else can we do? Again, before and again, I'll talk a minute about potentially moving someone south, but another way to do is, okay, so instead of trying to do sort of a quote Sunset and a quote Westview school, what if you split it another way? What if you took Jacob Wismer, walkability, Sato, Kevin and Stoller, Springville and Findlay, ironically together, down in the freeway can be covered handshake. Down below, along with Rock Creek, both schools then are kind of 50-50-ish, and I don't know what the SUMO program will look like there. I don't know if there would be enough space in one to have it all located at one school or not. But my main point there, and I want to mention one more thing, and another unfortunate consequence of doing this is that I mean, we're sort of struggling with thinking, okay, we want to make sure people can walk to Stoller, but in these scenarios, nobody's walking to Timberland. So another option would be you can take Rock Creek, send it down to Five Oaks. Again, I'm going to acknowledge they then really are getting the short end of the stick. They're one of the five truly cast out. They're not going to be with the community they've been a part of. But they would be with students feeding into Westview during middle school. And as some benefit. I played around with the cascading effects to make room, and it ends up looking a lot like the feeder test map in that I think it's most natural is that Aloha Huber Park becomes a part of Mountain View. You clean up the splits that are in Chehalem and Cooper Mountain, and you end up with Mountain View being a completely clean feeder pattern as far as I can see. Again, as far as moving something down because it's one school, it's not this sea change of culture. I think it's another way to go. But from my point of view, I mean, again, I believe we've got different ways we can shuffle those 5.5 cards. Where in the worst case scenario, we're only moving one out. And I think honestly, if there's any consensus on that, we could probably produce 3 or 4 maps of logical shufflings, have them here, and pretty much come out with a decision for that part of the district next. And by the way, I've got to finish this off. If you move Rock Creek into Five Oaks, that then frees up space to move Cedar Mill, which is, Timberland is inside the Cedar Mill boundary. There's a lot of walkable students in there. It allows them to go there. We gain some walkers that we might otherwise use in other areas. But again, I think if we can settle on trying to maximize solving the problem within Timberland, it saves us a lot of different ways to try and do what I'll call the full cascade of options. And we can at least settle on our approach to Timberland by next meeting. I'm sorry, approach to Stoller, which really is, based on what we're there, going this route, the question is, do we end up with Cedar Mill and Timberland or not? That's all, and then we can turn our attention south into the district. So, as I mentioned earlier, by way of kind of getting this to work momentum, I think it might be good to see if there is consensus on the idea of, shuffling those cards in North District, or whether there are people who are really committed to wanting to push Springville, for instance, down below 26.
All right, thank you. Michelle?
I know what you're saying in our 2 objectives about Stoller and Timberland, and I agree that is our primary objective. However, I think the high school boundaries caused a fair amount of disruption, and this is our opportunity to resolve issues that already exist. We're all talking about walkability to Stoller. The Greenway, they can't walk to Conestoga, they're sent to Whitford. Aloha Huber can't walk across the street to Mountain View, they're sent to Five Oaks. So I think, yes, we're trying to populate Timberland and depopulate Stoller, but I think the boundaries haven't changed in 20 years. This is a chance to sort of fix stuff that sort of happened over the last 20 years.
And just to clarify, I'm not opposed to those things, but what I'm saying is if we can mostly solve it without, I believe we'll actually have more options to do that if we are not trying to deal with 700 kids being pushed down from up north. I think now we've got a lot more flexibility. Like I said, in the map I did, which I think we'll see next time, I sent an email about it. There was where I shuffled the cards and put Rock Creek down to 5 Oaks. It did. It changed Lower Huber Park to not use Lake Walk. It cleaned up 2 splits. And again, I didn't even get to looking over there. But at least now we can make changes based on trying to do things better for the kids rather than we've got to make room for 400 kids.
And I do think that you and I agree on it does look like 2 schools can go to Stoller. I mean, is that scheme? Is it just me that thinks that, or are we seeing that it is not possible to fit 3 elementary schools into Stoller?
from the numbers, that's what it, that's what it shows like, and it depends on the school.
Yeah, if I jump in, it's only 2 if it's Sato and Springville. We can fit the other 3 plus the SUMO program. So that's sort of, 3 and some percentage, if you will.
And that's sending Springville to Timberland by doing that? Or
Well, if Springville and Saddle are together, they can be at either Timberland or they can be at if you split it up that way, if they're together, everyone else is going to be the super program needs to be the other one. Whether that's Timberland or whether that's Stoller doesn't matter because they're roughly equal capacity.
Divya?
Yep, so there's one data point I like the committee to refer to, that is in the report, AC report. I think it is on page number 4, the last sentence. I'll read it out loud. With respect to the last bullet point, which is average bus time and miles traveled for a given middle school, the current median, which is the most often answered, bus route is approximately 22 minutes and 5 miles, right? So this test map 4 we are looking at, we're trying to solve a problem that seems to be accepted in the district now, in some school districts. I just get, my moral compass is not allowing me to accept the fact that I'm losing walkability in school and get on a bus while I can literally throw rock in the backyard and land this. So that's my fundamental problem is the test map 4. I understand the spirit of fears, I understand the spirit of equality and all that, but again, the median is 22 minutes or 5 miles. Losing neighborhood kids, walkability, it's not going well.
Yeah, and again, that was one way to shuffle it. Like you said, you could flip it to keep the walkability, and if that's your choice. I mean, I think that becomes, if we didn't go that route, it becomes almost a vote. Who cares more about walkability? Who cares more about kind of not having litters and roofers? I mean, there's not a right or wrong answer. It's a value judgment. In terms of miles, I forgot to mention one thing. Another thing that just pushed the idea of sending Springville or someone or Sodom or whoever down to 5 Oaks out of my head is I just did a little playing with Google Maps. I'd encourage you all to do the same thing. I picked a couple of points in Sodom, in Springville. I said, give me a distance and a time to 5 Oaks. Give me a distance and a time over to Timberland. It was less than 1 mile, usually about 0.8 of a mile farther to get to Timberland with an increased travel time of 2 minutes. It's just not enough savings on the transportation side for me to justify, again, that sea change of bringing all kids down.
So I would just caution everyone, I agree with Jason, going to Google Maps is a good tool to consider, but as we narrow down these options, we will run the map ideas through our bus routing software. Where are the kids? How do we design the route? And get to, miles, time, cost. Not to say that what Jason just said is wrong, it's just we need to view it through our programming as a consistent marker. I would also point out to the committee in response to what Divya just said, we did receive today, and it's in your packet, looks like this, which is the transportation data for the middle schools based on AM bus routes and PM bus routes. And it goes by each of the middle schools. It talks about the number of riders, it talks about the number of miles, and it talks about the the amount of ride time. So in the afternoon for middle schools, the average ride time is, or average ride in miles is 5.4 miles. The average ride time is 25 minutes and 30 seconds. And in the morning, the average miles is 4.5 miles with the average ride time of 21 minutes. So the median is a good example, but you asked for the average. You have the average based on current routes. And as I said just a moment ago, as we start coming down on ideas, we can do more analysis on the transportation part. We don't want to do it on every idea just because of the sheer volume and the time that it takes to be able to do that. So I'm not seeing any other, oh, Michael. Go ahead. All right. Where'd you get?
So when we're talking about the two schools, only two schools can go slower, are we not talking about Jacob Wismore going slower? Like, no. Should Jacob Wismore wouldn't go slower than what you're proposing?
So, and I apologize, I wish I could have produced 3 or 4 maps to show you all variations in the theme. Yes, Jacob Wismore can go there. This particular one, I happened just, again, I said, okay, if you're going to split it up, take the 2 closest to Timberland, send them there. It's not, someone could easily say Jacob Wismore, Findlay, Rock Creek, and the sewer program stay at Stoller, Springville, Saco, go down to Timberland. You can mix and match those 5 elementary schools in a variety of different ways. It's just a question of how much we want to prioritize feeder patterns, walkability, those things. But I think you can definitely, within the idea of keeping Stoller, Timberland as a unit, splitting the community, you can shuffle it any number of different ways. The biggest limitation I saw was that Springville and Southern are so large that if those 2 are together, then nobody else goes with them.
But when you're proposing to, so like let's say that we say that for the two elementary schools that the first or will be Jacob Wismore and Finley, wouldn't busing Springville and Zeta to Timberland create the exact same problem that people have with busing Springville and Zeta to Five Oaks? And in fact, it's farther to busing to Timberland. And just like you said previously that you disagree with sending Springville and Zeta South 26 like that far distance. So I just don't understand.
Okay, so to clarify, in terms of my basic calculations I did today showed that the change in distance was not that much. The real benefit to sending them to Timberland rather than to Five Oaks is that Timberland's empty. So we're solving both problems directly. We're depopulating Stoller and we're populating Timberland. If we send them to Five Oaks, now we've got to kick 500-600 students out of Five Oaks over to wherever. Now we've got to do this full rotation where we change multiple schools in order to get kids back around, probably to fill in Cedar Park, so that the Cedar Park kids end up over in Timberland. It's just less disruption in my mind if we can populate them directly. And I'll also note that, I calculated about 0.8 of a mile difference the routes from those neighborhoods between Timberland and Five Oaks. But the closest middle school to Stoller is Timberland.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Jason, for your work on this idea. It's reasonable, and I think that's good for our discussions here. I'll speak first with respect to Committee Map 1, because it leads into my point about Committee Map 4. Committee Map 1, with respect to Findlay, and those people that live within a stone's throw, I think, as we said. Yes, that would be part of the carve-out process of the Committee Map 1, the narrowing down, voting it, as you mentioned, Steve, but not necessarily part of the discussion this evening. Now, with respect to review of Committee Test Map 4, it just doesn't pass the eyeball test to me first, but I don't see sending Jacob Wismore school that's essentially across the street from Stoller down to Timberland. It doesn't make any sense to me. The proximity consideration clearly is not met at that point. Plus, it makes no sense to me to send 2 schools across another middle school boundary district to reach what I'm ultimately going to be attending. So for those reasons, I think the committee test map 4 has issues. I also would point out with respect to the objectives that the board has proposed to us. In 2021, test map 4 has Timberland only at 73%. My understanding is 80% is the sort of threshold for appropriate middle school programming. Is that accurate, Steve?
What we have identified is a minimum of 800 students, and this is at 803.
Okay, so it's the number of students, not a percentage. Okay. Well, and if we go ahead to 2025, then we're down to 64% in Timberland, so it looks like that. Number relatively is down to 706, so it's down 100 students.
Michael, if I could jump in, and again, I apologize, I wish I could flesh this out differently for you. Absolutely you're right, it was not a complete idea once the numbers fell out. What I mentioned is again, if I could rephrase it, I would encourage people, do not picture on test maps. Again, it's one scenario. The idea I'm proposing that I think we should see if we have some consensus on is the idea of maximizing the use, maximizing the transfer of solar students to Timberland. Another best way of saying it is, are people ready to let go of the idea of shoving Springville and Rock Creek together down into Fair Oaks? 5 Oaks, sorry. Again, if you want to change the walkability, you can. Absolutely. I mean, there's different ways to shuffle those 5 pieces. The way I mentioned earlier in terms of the Timberland population, you mentioned bring Rock Creek over to Timberland. Another thing that I proposed that'll be, I guess, map 5 or 6. I moved Rock Creek down to 5 Oaks and brought in Cedar Mill into Timberland. So I mean, trust me, it's easy to balance. I just think if we can move to see if there's consensus there, it drastically narrows our choices and gets us closer to having a set of things we can really pick from next time. And another thing I would say, you're absolutely right. Failing the eyeball test, it's always going to happen. You have to drive by one school to get to another. I don't see a way around it. The question is it going to be in 1, 2, or 3 locations around the district? It's just a side effect of all the heavy population being in the Northwest and the new middle school being built over in the Middle East.
So I want to do a quick time check here. We have another 30 minutes available for committee discussion. We haven't heard from a number of you, and Yasmin, you're going to be next, but I just wanted to call attention to the time. Michael, did you have anything else you wanted to say on this point before we move on? Okay, so Yasmin.
Okay, regarding test map 4, thank you, Jason. This was, I think, a good exercise.
I just asked you to hold that thing a lot closer.
It was a good exercise to show us do we really need all this disruption or not. But unfortunately, I think we need the disruption. It opened our eyes about the possibilities that we can play and the cards that we can play, as you said. But it's still, it doesn't. I cannot swallow either the existing one or taking Springville and driving this ice over to go to school. So I think I think we will need the disruption to a lot of schools, and eventually the communities will get used to it. Even if we can have the current students with the legacy issue. If they are already in one school, they continue in the same school. We're not going to do somebody right now. But afterwards, a few years, these communities will reestablish themselves, and I think they'll be fine. And there are examples that already went, like Oak Hills, for example, who can drive, I think, less time to solar, but they're already driving across 26 per year, 126 per year. And they go to Menlo Park, it is not near, but they are doing it. So, again, regarding test 4, I think I'm not for it.
Okay. Monica. and yes, get that nice and close.
I don't want to rush any closure on discussion on test 1 or test 4, but we did make a point to kind of request that we make a couple of models based off of just equity and the staff leader and the staff test with the utilization capacity. So I would encourage to move on to that as soon as we're finished, because I have some comments on that. I didn't want you to miss out.
Matthew?
Thanks, Jason, for putting this stuff together. I had one quick question. We've been talking a lot about, speaking of the test map 4, I still see Cedar Park as being way overpopulated. How would we address that?
So in one variation, if you take Rock Creek down, we could just say it'd be better served by being with people you go to high school with and bring them down to 5 Oaks, then you have a capacity to move in Cedar Hill, and that's just bring some programs and that. If it did nothing and budgeted, I mean, it's overcapacity on permanent capacity, it's narrowly under capacity of portables. I think we can narrowly carve out, my first thought, and again, I didn't put it over the map here, would be Raleigh Park is currently split, and if you took the narrow portion of it that is currently going to Cedar Park, reunited with the rest of it that currently goes to Whitford, that would, I believe, bring down.
So the part you're talking about is just this part of Raleigh Park is this attendance area. That part right there is split. It goes to Cedar Park and it goes to Whitford. Okay, Monica, you are going to lead us into conversation on the map that you want to talk about. So which one is that?
I'm curious, I have a comment on both ends. I'm curious about just thoughts of starting with one of these that has a more even base of spread across the school.
So do you want to start with the utilization of capacity or the feeder test?
The feeder, my comments are relevant to both, but we can start with the feeder test.
Okay.
So I do agree with the sentiment that it's hard to the family community that is very near school. So a way that we could find is a way that we could find a solution that would allow that community to be a part of Stoller. Another thought, and this is not my home base, but there's a dual language program coming out of Barnes, and that I believe feeds into Meadow Park. And so these two maps both pull Barnes out of Meadow Park. So my students are in dual language at both and Whitford, and I know that is really impactful not only to the school, but to the community, right? So having that disruption from students and families in a dual language school, much less the program itself, but the school as well, even if you're not in that, going towards middle school that doesn't have that. And then I understand that another kind of adjust, that would be a huge infrastructure change for either elementary school or middle school. So both of these maps force Barnes and Meadows Park to split, which I think is very, very, very disruptive.
Okay, Michelle.
Is this program like the dual language on the table to adjust? Because as I understand it, the Little Huber would have also dual language, right? And since those districts are next to each other, might it make sense to create a program there around that area of the district?
Well, I can tell you with confidence that is way outside my lane to respond to, but I would suggest to you that that is not an options program. That is a fundamental practice that the elementary schools have chosen to do for language. And if anything, the elementary schools would need to perhaps expand the program. But I'll have to get back to you on it with a more concise answer. Marty?
Did we talk earlier too that there was going to be more of a universal middle school? The middle school programs are going to look more universally similar? So
Yes.
maybe that would be addressed in that language would be offered universally?
Mr. Strickland, are you ready?
So the middle school experience team has not taken on dual language at this point. That's something our multilingual department has planned for years. And a lot of those feeds started naturally that as elementary kids matriculated up, that neighborhood middle schools saw a need in their neighborhood and built those programs. So the existing or historical feeders have advised that, but it is reasonable for us to work with multilingual and work with the capacity that exists after you are making recommendations to look for some natural ways that we can either maintain feeds that exist now and are healthy and successful, or to have some proposals about ways that we can take elementary programs and look at the new proposed middle school and to look for shifting. So for example, if Barnes is feeding into Cedar Park and Cedar Park feeds to Beaverton, and we have dual language now at Barnes, Meadow, Beaverton, might we look at Barnes, Cedar Park, Beaverton, for example?
Okay, I would check.
Before I start, did you want to comment on the other thing? Which one?
The feeder and utilization factor.
Because I was going to start with what I would do. So I was just, when you started talking after about 2 minutes, I lost which one you were talking about. You jumped around quite a bit. But I think, so I want to walk through my way of thinking. I think one thing I guess in the committee we should follow is nobody's trying to take into the other. This was like shut it down files. And just putting us, let's follow the current. And it looks like the 4 as it is proposed, people are setting on that. So the way I approach this, and I'm going to just lay out the thinking of it based on what district has given. So the goal that was given was 90% storage permanent capacity to 2021 and 800 to 2021. And also one what is the what Michelle has said regarding going to see how many of this work. So that's one goal. The other one that district leaders last time was they want to use permanent capacity. And I talked about it in the district has the data to actually back that up. So 90% of the means, so if we target to get everybody around 80 to 100 at 2025, we really should be honest with the problem solving that is in front of us. I think we can get there. But at least we should attempt that. So the way I was thinking was, so this is the problems based on that will be given to us. Now, Steve has been preaching to look at the entire district as a comprehensive map, not just one area, and then find solutions that would work for all the district. So the way I started up was there are 34 elementary schools, there are 9 middle schools. So each elementary should get 3. At least 3, some will get 4. School that has 5 elementaries today. If I want to fit 3, that's a 5C3 problem, that's 10 solutions. We are talking about 3. There are many. So my point is there are many options available to make a master. So without trying that, starting to split is a little risky simply because from a practical standpoint, you can start doing splits and visual. Every street, every natural landmark starts doing a split. So the way I approach this, can I do holistically elementaries into middle schools? So I'm keeping the elementaries together And can I satisfy the board objective and also the intent of permanent capacity? And my fear about the not following the permanent capacity is there's about 800 plus in portables. If we as parents tell the district it's okay to start using portables, what's stopping them from closing the middle school and using portables? And we can't have it both ways. So, just in terms of intellectual honesty, keeping the objectivity of the data, 90% solar, 800 people in 2021, 2025, all middle schools, can I get to 800? The way I approached it, the only one subjectivity I allowed myself was, let's keep the elementary intact, not split it. Right? And then once you do that, there are two options program that you could figure out very quickly. One is ratio crossing, another is SUMA. So what is the data telling us about that? So ratio crossing seems in fact one of the, you can't really, so that's one number. SUMA is divided, there are 3 SUMAs put in. One is north of 26, one is south central, which is another part, and one is south. So conceptually, we want to say, okay, we want to keep at least that. We want to add one more, what is the data there? Right? And the district has given us that too. If there are 60 students per grade, they can start in the SUMA. Whether they will start or not, I don't know. But so we, with that data in mind, and the last piece of data that Steve gave us today was the linear distance to this plan. So I wanted to lay out what the data that has been given to us for the province. And then when I look at solar, like you pointed out, if you keep Springwood State or in one school, what other school can you add? So actually, they're just from numbers point of view, two solutions. One is to make solar middle school of Margaret, keep Springwood State and Margaret. However, the one more point I will make sure I say that out. I think we'll probably all agree here. I wanted to always prioritize elementary school over option program population. As in, middle school has capacity, but rather put an elementary school and figure out where the options goes because options, well, it is an option. People take where they want to go. Right? So one option is what your option was to keep, make it not that in middle school. Springwood State on Rockwood. And that number would have worked. Like many people have commented here, it does not pass that. So the second option is then you got to take one of the 2 big schools and feed it out of school. Now, when I was looking at that, which Springwood and State would be selected to feed out of school. So again, are there numbers telling us something? So if you look at the elementary school positions given over the class time, Sato's population increases by about 200. Finley and Jacob together go down by about 180, 190. Springwood population goes about 100. So if you keep Springwood, Jacob, Finley, you will essentially have a declining population. If you keep Sato, Finley, Jacob, you will essentially have a very stable population consistency. You solve it once, it's going to be that. Also, if you look at it from the, so that was the first data, and then if you look at from the, how the schools are, so Jacob, Sato, Springwood, and that makes sense. So that was the guiding reason to say, okay, maybe Springwood will feed out of school. Now to the question of where I did not stretch myself to go down to timberland. You got to pay for the land. So the way I looked at it is from the Five Oaks Middle School point of view, Aloha Hooper comes from south into Five Oaks. And if you put a scale, it's probably equal or more than the northern part of Five Oaks. So my thinking was, if I do, if we do that, that might look like a 1:1 distance walk, maybe the median distance. So that was the thought process. And so we believe that the map, the test 2 and test 3 are similar. And the differences there are really how do we want to adjust feeders at the start. And one feeder is the most recent constant, or is the best constant. But just to answer, when I was mentioning this earlier, if you look at the resident population of test 2 and test 3, and decide, okay, so with that, how can I adjust? What's the new adjustment can I do to make that work?
So, Abhijit, we're,
Just one.
okay. I'm trying to bring it closer because it's going pretty wide.
Right. So in test map 2, you can just work on the options program. So this solar suma would go, you can take 100 kits out and you can take that along with the suma and line, you get to metal one. And then you can move HL custom to 0 1. That gives the numbers to where they need to be. If you want to solve the high school figure, what was happened pointed last time, it would be the input into the tax concept. So literally it's 1 or 2 steps in each of these 2 maps will bring us the district objective and also bring within the class of 51% almost 50%.
Okay, we have we'll touch more than 10 minutes left before we go to public testimony. Bring some new voices in here. Abdul, please.
Thanks. So looking at the start with that test map, I think it kind of makes sense in terms of the numbers and meeting our objectives, 1 and 2, basically completing solar. But they still have some concerns in the 2025 projection. I think you have solar competition. So the other thing is, I know that I was still going to be important. I think if we do, then you can still store at 102%, which I think is not that much to I'm of the inkling that the eventual solution will come up with kind of have to deal somehow with making a school, the middle school, south of US 26, basically feed the schools up north. And you can see in the feeder test map that that's essentially what Middle Park Middle School does. Basically, it serves crockery, bedding, and cookies. So I think in terms of the numbers, it makes sense. And it kind of avoids the problem that you run into with some of the other test maps where fireworks starts to shoot up in numbers. So I think this map is the map I would like to see going forward.
All right. Let's see. Again, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask questions. Jennifer or Lucrezia, do you guys want to say anything at this point? Because I'm going to call on you again. Okay, Jennifer.
So I've just kind of been taking it all and I like to observe and listen. For me, the maps that stood out that seemed like good starting points was the test feeder map and map number 4 because it kept us within the numbers. That's also to say they should also have tweaks to them to make them more useful for communities to be able to come together. But for me, I'd like to see those two kind of going forward. They make the most sense to me.
All right, Michelle, I see you shook your head. Or Lucrezia, I'm sorry, you shook your head. You're not ready to... Okay, I'm going to call on you later. Christy.
I also wanted to share that I would like to see the staff feeder map going forward as well. That was one of the maps that it looks like, for the most part, meets the criteria with the exception of the issue with solar. And one thing I wanted to ask the committee your thoughts. I know we've been talking about no split feeders. What if we split the high growth areas north up in Sawtell and Springville, and the areas that currently don't have houses but that are projected to be built out during this time period, and send them to Timberland. Would it be possible to get some maps with some numbers that show what that road is going to look like in Sawtell and Springville in the new developments where the people haven't moved to yet, so they don't have bought their house in the solar neighborhood yet?
So we know where the roads are going to be. We know where the lots are going to be in those areas. We do have the approved, the land use approved plans for development up there. We don't have a, guaranteed timeline when roads are going to be put in and the like. That will be coming along with development, and Robert and I spend a lot of time with the developers trying to understand their marketing plan, their sales plan, and when things will come online, so we can get you a pretty good idea. Charisse.
I also like the feeder map, and I also like the test map that really talks about capacity. When we look at the objectives, it's to bring solar down and to keep everyone around that 90. And that truly is the only map that gives us a shot at really doing that. And if we look at the feeder high schools on the sheet that you gave us, the feeder schools are the same split between the feeder test map and the utilization map. And I think we could make some tweaks to this map. For instance, if you look at 2021, Cedar Park's a little low, Whitford's a little high, there's this tiny little piece of Rose up in the top. I could potentially go to Cedar Park, helps out Whitford, keep some of the bigger middle school population, and going to Beaverton High School. There's little things like that we could do also with Mountain View and Highland Park, and potentially even Minnesota to account for the growth that's coming as well in the Southwest. And then 2021, we look okay. We go to 2025, and we have the options for grants to play with to match out solar and timberland and make sure that we have the right permanent capacity there. If we look at the permanent seats open in solar for 2025, we're looking at that negative 152. We have 185 in Timberland open, and we have 193 in Cedar Park open. So even if we had to split SUMA into two schools, we would still be able to stay at capacity in solar.
And so just to be clear, you're talking about the capacity
The
test.
capacity test.
Okay. And recognizing that that is not addressing splits, in fact, creates a split within the Sato community and Rock Creek.
Correct. It does. But if you look at those areas, the way they are grouped back into high school makes more sense. So there's potential that it may not be as big of a deal like you were talking with Nancy Ronald's parents. A lot of those kids end up back at the same high school. And so they will know each other. So those may be things we want to look at. And if there are swaps we could make, then great.
Okay. Good.
To go back to verbatim about goals, so that's the second dual language path, one of two in the district, so I really want to have the discussion of what that disruption looks like, because you're talking about communities and their culture and their language, and disrupting that is a big deal.
You got a quick one? Yeah. Abdul? Okay, go ahead. Get that microphone nice and close.
Yeah, so I just had a comment about the feeder test map. So I observed the middle part, as we said earlier, was going to be fed by Rock Creek, Bethany, and Oak Hills. But you go back to the summary test map, where you have the middle school to high school feeder. Middle part is actually still listed as Sunset and West. Is that Westview? The WHS? Westview has So I guess if it's Westview or Sunset, then that's still assuming that Oak Hills Elementary is actually still split in the middle, right? That's what they're going to. So my suggestion in moving forward with this map is to keep Oak Hills as one, since it's also a feeder map or a feeder test map where the entire Oak Hills Elementary goes to Middle Park and they all go to Westview as well.
Yeah.
The two maps that I'd like to see moving forward is the utilization of capacity. But as this looks like splitting data, because we are talking splitting, and I have 2 more splits to offer. So first priority is to take the walking feeding kids into, which means split feeding, first priority. And Jacobsburg is mostly walking, so after that, if there is room, take Cerro. Even after that, if there is room, split Springville and take how many other kids we can accommodate and see if the objectives in 2025. Okay. The second map is the test map 3. That seems to be bringing us close to the objective and still preserving the idea of not splitting schools. So the requirement that I like to offer on test map 3 is move SUMA students that are in the Philly non-walking distance, so the southern side of SUMA kids who are on the bus coming to Studer now will go to Timberland to take SUMA program. So in other words, I'm preserving 2/3 of Philly population, I'm just leaving the SUMA kids in Philly. And move Rachel Carson from Five Oaks and put them in Cedar Park.
All right, quick, Jason.
Just a quick point of clarification, Steve, that came out of I had under the assumption that as we've been looking at evaluating 90% of program capacity, we were staring at 2025 numbers. You great possibility that maybe we don't need to move over to 2021 numbers. What are your thoughts?
Our goals are to obviously create an equitable experience across the board. And create an experience that's sustainable. My goal is to open school in September 2021, where we can tell the board that we are at approximately 90% with Stoller as meeting the goal.
That makes it easier.
Yeah. Okay. I saw another card up that. Okay. Marty.
A ton of information, thank you so much. But it would be awesome if we could just bullet point it and hold it, because we've had many different points of what everyone wants to look at. So what are we focusing on for the next meeting? Because I feel like we need to narrow.
So what I would like to do here is, when we're done with public testimony, I want to have that conversation with the committee, because there has been a lot, we've been taking a lot of notes, and we could just do what Steve wants to do, but I would like to hear what it is and be sure that we heard you correctly and thoroughly. And besides, the audience may want to persuade you to ask for additional information, and so let's provide that opportunity. So with that, I'm going to close this part of the agenda, and we're going to move into public testimony. After the public testimony, we will convene again to make sure that we have everything that you're expecting. I want to be sure you think about our next meeting is next week, and our ability to crank through materials is robust, but we do want to give you time to have an opportunity to review the materials. And I will note, and I'll repeat this again later, supposedly we will have a chance for snow next week. I personally bet that with everybody in the office that we will not, because now if we do, I have to buy lunch for everybody. So we'll talk about that more, but think about that as well. So before I'm going to call people up, and as I said, when we call the names, as these were drawn randomly, we went by the elementary school noted area noted on the cards. And while I call names, I would, Ken and Sam and Brian and Jared, if you could help us move the tables out a little bit here on the end, so we don't have our committee members being talked to the back of their head. So, first, Jordan Delapore, sorry. Janine Kenyon, Josh Rashford, Curry Madala, Gori Trivedi, sorry, I was going to say Ram. Northwest 135th, Gabe Montero, and April Powers. So if you could, if I call your name, if you could please come up and have a seat at our tables, or at our chairs rather, where we have little signs saying reserved for public comment. All right, Jordan Delapore.
Thank you. I'll be very brief because Raleigh Hills and Raleigh Park are clearly not the central subject of concern or discussion. But I just note that the majority of maps proposed have Raleigh Park headed toward the Cedar Park area, which is a wholesale change for that school. And Raleigh Hills and Raleigh Park, students do a lot of activities, a lot of sports, a lot of community events. Together, they have over the years sort of become a singular community. So I would just request that as you consider the various maps, with your focus clearly toward the northwestern part of the city and how to manage that, that you continue to consider keeping Raleigh Park feeding wholly into the Whitford Middle School, thereby keeping that community together, if that's a workable solution. I think in almost all of the proposed scenarios, in either case, those schools still remain within the target population ranges for capacity. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, Janine Kenyon, please.
Hi, thank you for the time. My daughter goes to Supplemental Elementary School. You probably won't find a lot of people who will talk about that because, as you can see in current maps, about 80% I would suggest will stay together and feed into Highland Park, and only the small portion, like 10 to 20%, that lives down the hill will feed to a different school. And I think for those kids, it makes a big impact because they literally use the entirety of their support network. So as you progress and you work, and I mentioned it's not the main focus for you, but if you could keep in mind, you can make a small change for a very small amount of people. That has a big impact of those kids that live down the hill and are right now being separate. So thank you as well for this.
And just to be clear, you were talking about Cooper Mountain.
Yes, Cooper Mountain.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is Josh Rashford. Josh? Okay. Anybody else from Cedar Mill? Did we have another Cedar Mill card? Come on up. And ma'am, if you just tell us your name and we know you're at Cedar Mill.
My name is Eva Novak. This is a difficult decision, and we really appreciate the work that all of you are doing. Cedar Mill Elementary is a diverse school, both socioeconomically and socially and culturally. It is a small school with a close community feel. We don't think that the current Cedar Mill boundaries should be changed from our current boundaries as part of this middle school boundary process. We think that the Beaverton School District should prioritize having kids go to the closest school. Kids at Cedar Mill can look out the windows of their apartments and townhomes and see Timberland. And accordance with the school board policy on neighborhood proximity and accessibility, most Cedarville kids can walk or bike to Timberland. Map number 4 increases bus utilization and transportation times for Cedarville students. Schools should serve their neighborhood communities. Closing the middle school at Springville has exacerbated the problem of overcrowding at Stoller. The Beaverton School District really needs another middle school in the north of the district where all of this growth is happening. Map number 4 buses top performing kids outside of their neighborhood, not to Assuma Option Program School, but to Timberland. And it doesn't let the diverse community that physically surrounds Timberland attend the school. I want to thank you for soliciting and listening to comments from all of these Beaverton School District parents and students.
Okay, Curry Nadella, please.
From Finley Elementary. Thanks for the opportunity and thank you for the work BSD and the committee is putting into this project. Thank you. Neighborhood proximity is one of your policy chasing factors and it needs to be honored. BSD also sent out many tweets about promoting walking and biking, which benefits the environment. The walking zone of Finley to Stoller will get almost double to 75% as per PHPRD maps from December 19th meeting. Busing such a walking heavy community doesn't make sense. Also, Finley kids stay together in high school, so why split them just for middle school? Research data shows that while all splits have a negative impact, elementary splits are the worst. Regarding Springville to 5 Oaks not meeting the eyeball test, please note that moving Finley and Jacob Bismarck out of Stoller fails that test too. The farthest from Jacob Bismarck and Finley to Timberland is 5.6 and 4.2 miles respectively. Isn't this the same distance as Springville to 5 Oaks? Kicking out Finley and Jacob Bismarck adds busing costs to BSD. By 2025, almost 1,100 kids from north of 26 have to travel south. Busing Springville and Rock Creek to 5 Oaks solves this problem. The additional 10 to 15 minutes should not be blown out of proportion. Also, I would like to point out that Springville has to go through an overpass on US 26 and not through US 26 traffic. There are many BSD and HSB school buses that travel on various US 26 overpasses every day. On a side note, 5 Oaks getting overcrowded with Springville and Rock Creek going there can be solved by moving Rachel Carson to Timberland. Please do consider that option. Also, the maps from the December 19th meeting showing that Springville and Rock Creek and 5 Oaks scheme improves equity and ethnicity numbers BSD-wide. In our view, test map 3 provides a balanced starting point for a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Gauri. Thank you, please come up.
Good evening, everybody, and good evening, committee. I feel very happy to see the staff maps today, and they seem to be an excellent opportunity to start discussing this redistribution. I am a Springville storer, soon to be a Westview mom, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak today. Looking at those last two maps, the distance, equity, and numbers all point out that keeping Springville in Stoller is the most logical thing to do because, and my viewpoint is, Stoller is the only middle school within a reasonable commute time for the Springville students. 5 Oaks, touted as the next closest option, is far from being close. There is one community college, an elementary school, and a high school, all before we even hit the freeway or the overpass to the freeway to get to 5 Oaks. It is nothing short of a traffic nightmare. Sending Springville to 5 Oaks is also clearly not an equitable solution since A, it takes away some diversity from Stoller, B, puts unnecessary hardships on just one particular set of the school kids, and C, passes on the overcrowding and creates capacity issues at 5 Oaks. This is completely avoidable since there is a brand new middle school ready to welcome more than 800 students. Timberland has been built specifically to reduce overcrowding at Stoller. It makes sense for the geographically closest schools to feed into it, make it a clean Sunset High School feeder, causing the least disruption. The The Stoller community is made up of 5 different schools. There is no logical reason for any one of these schools to feel more entitled to Stoller than the others. I would like to commend and appreciate the staff and the volunteers at Stoller for doing an awesome job in spite of being overcrowded for many, many years. It is hard enough to handle teenagers, but even more so without adequate space. Please do the right thing for all the BSD students. They are depending on you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to represent Jacob Bismarck. We appreciate the committee as well as the district's time and dedication towards all the effort that has gone towards this exercise. Keeping the district's objective in mind to balance both the future enrollment of the middle schools in the district as well as considering things such as proximity to residences to schools, safety, traffic, as well as time and logistics. We have reviewed some of the available maps that were posted today. And based on that analysis, we believe that the committee test map 3 comes closest to achieving the district goals, both in a 2021 perspective as well as 2025. We understand that there might be some finer adjustments that need to be made, but this is a great starting point for us to work towards the adjustment exercise. The Jacob Bismarck families are in support of map 3 since Jacob Bismarck is directly next to Stoller, as many of you have pointed out. And a vast majority of our kids live within a 1-mile radius and walk or bike to school. If Jacob Bismarck were to feed any other middle school than Stoller, as has been suggested by the test map 4, it would mean busing a significant amount of students, 395, based on the numbers that we saw, out to this new school. The high cost of shuttling these kids in school buses would come out of our tax dollars, which I would rather see go into teachers' programs as well as student programs there. The committee test map 4, virtually every student in BSD is getting bused and simply not right. SUMA students by grid code map again shows a large set of population going towards Stoller, and we would like to keep that as it is. So test map 3 seems like our best option at this point. Thank you.
Okay, Dave Montero.
Hello. My name is Gabe. I have 2 daughters that go to Rock Creek. And I just wanted to say that I don't prefer map 1 very much because I feel like it's unfair for Rock Creek to be kind of singled out, moved down to the other school, which changes the academic rating pretty significantly for my daughters. But I was thinking that is a very micro way of looking at it, and I am pretty biased because I have 2 daughters that go to that one school, not really thinking too much about the rest of the district. So I kind of got to thinking, isn't everybody kind of biased? Everybody here, I think, is from Beaverton, so a suggestion might be, and I think this has been mentioned before, is to, it might be too late for this, but to hire like an independent consultant from maybe another state that has no connections to Beaverton, and for them to do an analysis and a justification, and then have another meeting so that we can review their justifications and make sure that we agree with their logic. So I just wanted to make that suggestion. And I guess I don't know too much about what has already been done. My understanding is that it's basically been the Beaverton School District and the parents that have been kind of coming up with the ideas up until this point. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last person this evening is April Powers.
Hi, I'm a Sato parent, and I wanted to touch on the topic of legacy, and I imagine I'm in the minority on my opinion. I am the mother of a current 5th grader at Sato. We already had to switch elementary schools in 3rd grade from Springville, and our area has changed schools 5 to 6 times in the last 2 decades. Next year, my son will start at Stoller with 1,600 students, standing room only classrooms, and teachers that cannot possibly have quality relationships with so many students. If he remains at Stoller, the likelihood that he will experience any relief from the overcrowding is slim to none. Look at how many parents are here fighting to stay at Stoller. If they are given the chance of legacy, very few of them will leave voluntarily. Not only will it be a traffic nightmare around Stoller, but students in 6th and 7th grade next year will receive no benefit or relief for their entire middle school time. All of their years will be overcrowded and impersonal. This would affect more than just academics. Rather than allowing legacy, it makes more sense to keep elementary schools together as much as possible to maintain friendships during transition and to minimize the number of schools that move while bringing middle to high school feeders intact. Middle school is only 3 years and change is expected and anticipated in that time. By taking legacy out of the picture, you can be much more lax on the 90% target for Stoller in 2021 and can make sure it is built to capacity in 2025. It is an ideal world. Yes, in an ideal world, we would never need portables, but due to poor locations of schools in high-growth areas, it makes the most sense to fill Stoller to total capacity in 25 and 26 and to allow the population to settle. I urge you to use the feeder map as a basis since all schools are over 800 students and at or below capacity, with Stoller at 102 at the max growth of Sato. If you truly desire it lower, move all of Suma out of to Timberland. Thank you.
Okay, that is it for public testimony. So I have 2 comments for public testimony that I want to make. One, for those of you who had read prepared statements, I think I speak for the advisory committee, that please go home, write it down and submit it so they can read it and consider it. It's great that you're able to provide testimony, but it's still good to have in your hands to read and think about. Secondly, if you weren't called to testify, please write your comments and hit submit. I know our committee is reading all the comments. We are over 1,800 comments, and they have read. You're all nodding, yes, you've read every single one. So yes, please, your comments are important, so please submit those. Okay, so the final part of our agenda, we're not on the East Coast. We want to talk about what are Robert and I going to do for the next few days and get ready for our meeting. Something I want to get to in terms of just logistics here. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 16th, and it will be continuing to refine and move further along the trail to a recommendation that's scheduled for Highland Park Middle School. If on the off chance I lose my bet and we are closed on the 16th, which is a possibility, we will continue the meeting. We will conduct it on Thursday, January 23rd. So we're just going to move it a week, and hopefully we don't have to do that, but just in case. If we do close because of weather, it will be on our webpage. We will do like a school messenger and get the word out so you don't get on the road and drive in the ice. So your safety is important. So it's not just your children's safety. Everybody's safety is important. So Moving forward here for next time, we've had some good conversations, and I have a pretty good idea that both Robert and David have been taking copious notes, but let's start with Michelle. Please kick us off.
I was wondering if we, as a committee, can maybe eliminate some of these and focus our efforts on, say, like 3 maps, if there's some that the majority of us feel aren't even worth pursuing.
You are not going to hurt my feelings by doing that, but you may hurt other people's feelings. We do have a lot of information to plow through, and the more refined that you can provide us direction, the sooner we can do it, which is the sooner we can get it to you and published for the public. So, seeing how next week is the next meeting, it will be again probably Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, when we're able to crank through things, depending on what you're requesting. So, Michelle, do you want to nominate those that are kicked off the island?
Or can I nominate the one I'd like to pursue? Which would you prefer?
I'm more than happy to go either way that you want, if you want to.
Well, I would kick out 4, and I would keep the statute.
Folks, please, I understand this is emotional, but let the committee have a discussion. So, proceed.
So I personally like the staff feeder as a starting point, acknowledging that it needs tweaks.
Okay, going back for it. Jason, I think you were next.
So my thought is, I don't think any of these maps should come back because we've not settled on any one and we've said, this is fine. I think if we want to bring something sort of back, someone should send an email later, or if they know exactly what they want now, say, hey, bring back, I want to see map 2 with these changes, or whatever. For me, there's no reason to bring map 4 back, I'll speak to that one. And Robert, the map that we discussed before the meeting, and I emailed everybody about map 5, hold off on that. I mean, understanding that we're now looking at 2021 numbers, I'm not going to digest it. I will reshuffle the cards, to use my metaphor earlier, and send these proposal on something else.
Okay, I hear you. What I don't want to receive is 16, 17 emails with different requests. It's going backwards. So I don't mind receiving your emails with the understanding that we may or may not be able to get to them. My preference is to hear you, and I'm sure the public would like to hear your thoughts on what you'd like to see moving forward, and we can certainly do that. Okay, we started over here with Michelle, then we'll go to Divya next.
Test map 1 and staff feeder test. I think they're both similar, at least from shoulder point of view and human point of view. So I think because staff feeder maintains that theme pattern, I would choose staff feeder and keep test map 1 out. Any thoughts about that?
They don't come back.
Do you say 1 and 4 not come back?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and over here, Monica.
I agree that I would like to see Tesla out, and then potentially keep the staff, the capacity map with modification to maintain the dual language as to be redundant.
Okay, they're typing, I'm writing, I'm old school. I'm sure we're getting it. All right, over here on this side, La Parisienne.
So yes, this is a lot of information to take in. So, but agreeing with some of the other members, I would like to see the staff test map leader one, so we can talk about that and see how that goes.
Okay. Monica, you already spoke, so, Abhijit. I'm sorry? Oh, okay, then, Sharice.
I think that working off of the feeder map and the utilization map really make the most sense. They have the least amount of splits into high school. They're the only two maps that have 2 high schools or less on every middle school. I would like to see almost a combination of the two. Just looking at the south side where I know the most about. For instance, the feeder map has Nancy Riles all in middle school. The utilization does not. If we were to keep them all in one middle school, could we move Shahale to Mountain View and Shoals to Highland Park? So if the district could look at some of those splits on the utilization map and see if it makes sense to move specific schools to keep it balanced and fix some of the feeders, I would like to see that. The other thing I would love to see, and I don't know if you have access to it, is where the little leagues overlap. Someone brought up athletics and how the kids all work together. And the little leagues have a very specific elementary feeder system that they use, and I don't know if there's a way for us to look at that.
I'm sure there's a way we can figure that out. Okay, Yasmin.
So I know we're trying to narrow down, but one of the comments that we received was an email with an attachment that worked out this map. I wonder if you all saw this one. I think it has a lot of potential, and I would really think it might be interesting to hear the community's ideas about this one. So if it's at all possible that we can have a look at this map and discuss it next time, that would be great.
Okay, so for the record, if you would please identify for everybody, when did it come in and who sent it in?
Yeah, I know who sent it, but when it was.
Okay, well, who sent it, we'll figure it out.
It was sent by Jamie Williams, and it says Plan B, Adult Boundary Adjustment Recommendations.
Okay. And for the record, you're saying it's Jamie Williams?
It was sent, Jamie Williams sent it on December 31st.
Okay, perfect.
So I think I personally would be interested to hear what the community has to say about this one. And I would like also to see the future map next time.
Okay. Okay, we can do that. Mike.
Thanks, Steve. 3 things. First, I would propose that we eliminate at least one of the maps tonight. Number 2, I would specifically ask that and propose that the agenda next time set aside some time to again vote to narrow the maps that we deal with in our next meeting. And third, I know I'm saying let's narrow, but now I'm asking for another one. I realize that the staff feeder deals with elementary feeders, right, into middle schools. I also know from departments and even from College of Pittsburgh Committee that there's significant concern about feeders from middle schools to high school and how I tend to be of the opinion that that's actually more important than elementary school to middle school. So I would propose that that be presented next time.
Okay. Abdul.
I think I would vote to keep the staff here map and probably pick up the rest of the capacity map. Definitely the staff here map as a starting point. The rest, I'm not sure.
Okay. Abhijit.
See, one confusion is in the summary table that's written here. It's with the options program as we outlined. And I think moving the options program changes 6% is significant. saying both D2 and 3, if you were just to move Suma, cap Suma and Solar, and move it to Timberland and move Rachel Crossing to Cedar Park, and that works. So my question is, first of all, in any of these maps, if you cap Suma in Solar, make Timberland another Suma, you will essentially have Meadow Park, Solar, Timberland, and Wilford, so 4 Suma programs. Is that going to be okay? And secondly, moving Rachel Crossing and 5 also Cedar Park, is that not okay? And so both D2 and 3 maps would work adjusting those, right? But what I would like to request is on any one of those maps, to minimize the Merriweather's high school split, Bethany fitting into Timber is one of those.
Okay.
But I also like what Jason said, maybe like the more or less on, I guess we can be very specific to these things.
Right, as always, if you have specific requests, we're happy to consider them. All right, Matthew.
Thanks, Steve. And hearing everything tonight, I'm leaning towards the meter test map and the utilization cap, or some sort of combination of the two. Would like to consider, I thought it was a great point that Sharice brought up in terms of the housing and how that might fit in. Both of these maps have still US building overage takes to work at the end of the day, so that might be a way to do it there.
Okay. Jennifer.
I agree with Sharice and Matthew. I'd like to see maybe a combination or look more closely at the 2 staff maps and see maybe what can happen with those.
Dare I say, staff can just come up with a map and you'll figure it, and you guys can weigh in. Don't want to do that. We're not going to do that. So, for the record, I'm kidding. Has everybody had a chance here? Marty?
So just to summarize, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are, is that what I was hearing?
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay, because staying on board with the other 2, looking those with us, just wanted to clarify.
If we are going to move forward with the staff income, I'm talking about programs.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Marty's done, so go ahead.
Staff leader test and the utilization of capacity. If you are going to move forward with those 2 and remove 3 also, then I would include the walking kids from the
Jason, okay, so Jason, then Sharice is going to finish us off.
Just to clarify, those 2 remain, but I think we've got a suggestion for another map for community. I know I'm going to send at least one idea for map, others may as well. I think we will, again, probably have 5 or 6 maps, but I think it makes great sense to eliminate the first 4, unless somebody's really planning for it. The other thing I'll mention as far as data we need, desperate to see the walking zones for all schools.
The walking zones. So there is a long, sad story about the walking zones. We have the walking zone map, and it's
an email to them.
okay. It's been emailed to you. We just didn't bring it tonight.
It's not a very sad story.
Well, I'm not getting into that sad story. All right. So Sharice, bring us home.
I just have one more comment, and something I would like to see, and I don't know if it's possible because it would come from staff. The educators that are in this room probably have the most intimate knowledge of the students in the communities. I would love to see what they would propose as far as where they would put their students.
I think they collectively swallowed their tongues. I did invite them to a meeting next week, so start thinking about it, guys. Okay, I'll bring a toaster for the bagels then. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much, and I just a gentle